This is the Farmers Union Insurance Bison Football Pregame Show.
Here's a live shot inside the Fargo Dome. Carson Wentz, the big big talker all week. Hey, is he going to possibly play today? We can see right there he is in street clothes, so I'm going to guess the answer is probably a big no. Good morning and welcome to the Farmers Union Insurance Bison Football Pregame Show. I'm Chris Berg along with Alex Egan. A lot of great things coming up today. The only place in town you're going to hear from Coach Chris Kleiman right here on the show in just a few moments. Also, some great Proceed player roundtable discussions. We'll be breaking down today's matchup. But I want to start here. Last night, Richmond, big upset, obviously over Illinois State. They went into Illinois State, upset them, which means, and I don't want to get ahead of ourselves here, but if the Bison win today, another home game in the playoffs.
Well, before we get into the playoff picture, which is a very important playoff picture, let's go ahead and take a look at the schedules for each team first to see how we get to where we are. We'll bring up the North Dakota State schedule here, and you can see, just a little bit of a downfall after this Northern Iowa game last time. Last time these two teams met, they both lost the next week. NDSU's lost to South Dakota. Northern Iowa goes on and loses as well. But you can see now that the teams are rolling. Sure, the back half of the schedule might have been a little bit easier for both squads as we can take a look at Northern Iowa's schedule now. They had a tough road to go. I mean, they were 2-4 at one point in this season, and now here they are in the FCS quarterfinals. Sure, they also might have had a little bit of an easier back half of the schedule, but a look at that. A win over South Dakota State, a close win over South Dakota State. They beat the same South Dakota team that beat NDSU. And then in their two playoff games, they beat Eastern Illinois, who a lot of people, again, saw maybe shouldn't be in the playoff to begin with. A dominating win. And then they dominated Portland State last week in the playoffs, a 29-17 win on the road. So a very impressive back half of the schedule for UNI. They are playing wonderful football.
Well, I think you got to look at their 59 points, 41 points, 50-some points. I mean, these guys are putting up a ton of points right now, in big part because of Aaron Bailey and the guy we did not see first time these two teams played, Tyvis Smith, a running back who is sort of a David Johnson-esque, who, oh, by the way, helped the Cardinals beat the Vikings on Thursday night. I mean, this guy is a stud.
That's probably pretty fresh for Vikings fans. Let's not go there just yet. But, yeah, he's been – it's been a two-headed monster for Northern Iowa, and it really stems back to the North Dakota State game when Sawyer Cole-Morgan was the starting quarterback, and I really think Northern Iowa wanted to beat NDSU with Cole-Morgan. I really think that's what they wanted to do, but Cole-Morgan suffered a concussion right at the end of the first half. Bailey comes in, changes the game completely, starts ripping off big plays. And
what I know about Coach Farley, he doesn't care how they beat the Bison. He just wants to win, whether it's Cole-Morgan, Bailey.
This is true.
It could be me back in that jersey trying to beat the Bison. He wouldn't have cared as long as they're going to pick up a W. And I think that's the big thing today. Today, watch the line of scrimmage. This is going to be an all-out slugfest for 60 minutes. It is going to be a very, very physical football game.
You mentioned that playoff picture. Some exciting news if you're a Bison fan, potentially exciting news. Let's take a look at the playoff picture right now. Look at that. Richmond getting the job done in Normal, Illinois last night, a 39-27 win. So if North Dakota State wins today, that means the road to Frisco goes through Fargo once again. Richmond knocking off number 2 seed Illinois State last night. So the highest remaining seed will host next week, which means if North Dakota State gets the job done today against Northern Iowa, back home next week. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's take a look at the other side of this bracket. And Jacksonville State, they seem to just be rolling right now. Obviously, I think their road to the national championship is a little bit easier than going through 4 or 5 Missouri Valley Conference teams on the other side of the bracket. But there's that team again down there. They moved up this game. Sam Houston State. I know Bison fans are probably, what is going on with Sam Houston State? You seem to always see them right here around this time, around December time. Sam Houston State, they actually moved this game up. This was supposed to be a later game, but they moved it up because of some impending weather in the area there for Sam Houston State. So Colgate, Sam Houston State, we'll see what comes of that. Those games will be playing alongside of North Dakota State and Northern Iowa today. An exciting playoff picture. And obviously, I think a lot of Bison fans are juiced up now that Illinois State went down.
Speaking about juiced up Bison fans, we're going to take you out to the tailgate right now. Our Northland Ford Dealers tailgate report. Mike Morgan's out there with some of the Bison Nation. Mike, what do you have for us, sir?
All right, thanks, guys. Boy, it is a party time out here to the west side of the parking lot of the Fargo Dome. And, yeah, it looks like dance club Saturday night here. And joining me to talk a little bit about it is, what's the name?
Charlie Cooper.
Charlie, you got a great setup here. Tell me about it.
Yeah, we got a great group of people, friends, family. Everybody comes out to have a good time and cheer on the Bison.
Yeah, I hear you got a daughter who's a cheerleader for the Bison?
We do. She's a junior, been on the team for the last 3 years, so shout out to Mackenzie.
All right, way to go. And finally, a lot of spirit here amongst this group.
Absolutely. We love the Bison, Bison Nation. We love to come out and have a good time and have some fun in the parking lot.
A lot of smiles here this morning, knowing Illinois State fell last night to Richmond.
You know, it's fun to control our own destiny again. We got that 3 seed, and now we're back to get a win today and play here again next week.
Yeah, wouldn't that be fun to be back out here?
We'd love to do this one more time.
Awesome. Okay, well, thank you so much. Hey, guys, you bet. Hey, and I want to show you something. Hey, okay, hey, good. Hey, I want to show you something on the wall. This group right here is actually projecting that image, and if you can see it, it's kind of faint now as the sun is coming up, but you can see it. There's the image of the Bison, and it says NDSU. So everybody's full of spirit out here in tailgate section. Back to you.
Rumor has it, Alex, those guys are from either California or Texas coming up here to watch this game, beaming the Bison up on the side of the dome. You can tell already the fans are crazy. You hear a lot about UNI noise level. It's going to be nuts today in the dome.
Yeah, both teams are used to playing kind of a playoff atmosphere. I think the last several times that they've met, it's been kind of a playoff atmosphere for them. So what an incredible atmosphere it's going to be out at the Fargo Dome. And I might have to go take it in today.
I think you should. Go drink it in, Alex. Drink in the atmosphere, my friend. All right, stay with us. We just mentioned this a moment ago. The only place in town you're going to hear from Coach Chris Kleiman is right here. He's coming up next with our very own Beth, who will stay with us. Much more coming up right here on the Farmers Union Insurance Bison Football Pregame Show.
This is the Farmers Union Insurance Bison Football Pregame Show.
Since Monday's press, we've all been wondering, hey, is Carson Wentz going to actually see the field today or not? We go now to our very own Beth Hool, standing by with Bison head football coach Chris Kleiman to get the answer. Beth?
Thanks, guys. All right, Coach Kleiman, you dropped the bomb on Monday. I have to ask you, Carson Wentz, do we see him today?
We'll see. It's still time before the kickoff, so we'll find out later.
If nothing else, what sort of spark has he brought to the team just being at practice? What sort of presence does he have?
Well, he's always got a great presence about him just because he's a captain and a team leader, and just having him out there doing a few more things has been a spark to us. But in the same respect, Easton's playing really good football.
You talk about the focus of this team all the time. How are they rolling into this week? How have you guys continued to progress into this week?
Well, you know, we came off an emotional game against Montana, played really good football. We were beat up a little bit. It took a few days to kind of get them back, so to speak, as far as more from a physical standpoint. But we had really good practices and culminated with an excellent practice on Thursday and walkthrough yesterday.
Final question here. UNI, a tough physical team, obviously. Where are they threatening right now that maybe they weren't when you saw them in the regular season?
Well, the quarterback playing all 4 quarters is a big deal, and we have to be able to control him. You can't stop him. He's too good a player. But we have to be able to control the running game, and then we have to be able to run the football and keep those guys on the sideline.
Thanks so much, Coach. Thought I was going to get an answer from him. No such luck, guys. Back to you.
All right, thank you very much, Beth. I think we do have our answer. We saw Carson at the top of the show in street clothes, but yeah.
Coach Kleiman's been playing this card all week very, very well. That might have just been another poker play, seeing him in street clothes.
This is very true, and I think that this bomb that he did drop on us on Monday saying, hey, Carson's coming back to practice, I think that it's a little bit of a chess match that these coaches are playing as we get into the playoffs. And really, the other thing that I think it is, it's taking away the scrutiny of the fact that, hey, there's a redshirt freshman quarterback starting in his first ever FCS quarterfinal game. Yeah, he did fine against Montana, but it's a redshirt freshman quarterback. I mean, we're talking about a kid here.
But last week we showed you on the show the points per game it's actually up by about 9 or 10 points with Easton Stick in. Granted, the schedule might be a little bit different, but that's a big distinction in my opinion. You're scoring more points with a young QB because we've got a very focused running game. And I'm telling you today, watch the line of scrimmage. The Rams need to play out of their mind in order to win this football game.
We'll get more into breaking down this game first, but we want to remind you that you can watch the Bison Football Show with Coach Kleiman tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. on KX4, and then we'll rebroadcast it following Valley News Live 10 at 10 on KVLY out here in the East. It'll be on the same NBC station out in the West. So straight ahead, we're going to have our Proceed Player Roundtable. We've got a great bunch of guys. They sat down Thursday night to talk about this matchup. Do not go anywhere. You do not want to miss it right here on the Farmers Union Insurance Bison Football Pregame Show.
This is the Farmers Union Insurance Bison Football Pregame Show.
Welcome back to the Farmers Union Insurance Bison Football Pregame Show. Earlier this week, Beth Houle sat down with some former Bison players. One of them, Wapaton's very own Ryan Smith. Great to see him back in town. It's our Proceed Player Roundtable breaking down this week's game. Beth?
Hey guys, thanks so much. We're out here at Herd and Horns. A great stop if you're looking to grab some good food and watch a football game any night of the week. We're here for our Proceed Player Roundtable. I'm joined by a great group of guys this week. We've got Ryan Smith, Kenny Clark, Brian Shepard, Mark Spurl, and of course, Brian Shawn there at the end, one of our own. Thanks so much for joining us, you guys. The big thing this week, Coach Kleiman dropping the bomb that Carson Wentz is back at football practice after breaking a bone in his wrist. He's been out for several weeks. Mark, you're our quarterback here. I'm throwing you under the bus first. I mean, what's it like for a quarterback? I mean, would he be able to actually play this weekend?
Well, he'd be able to play. The question is whether he should play. And 3-4 weeks ago, I said to a friend of mine, I said, if he came back, and that's when I was thinking he was closer to being back, that they should put him in. But now I'm not so sure. They've been rolling with Easton Stick as the quarterback, and very efficiently. And I don't know if, you know, there's always that school of thought, well, you don't lose your job because you're injured, but do you upset that apple cart when you've got things going as well as they have? Plus, to just come back to practice for a week and try to go into a game of this magnitude with this amount of hitting that's going to happen, I'm not sure that's the proper place to put him in.
Yeah, I mean, what's it like to, if you know, as a defensive guy there, Brian, to take on a quarterback that hasn't been playing? I mean, did you ever experience that? What would you be thinking if you knew you were going up against a guy who hasn't played competitively in several weeks now? Are you licking your chops?
We would be, you know, especially with Carson Wentz being such a key piece of this offense. I mean, a defensive player, they would try their best to get a big piece off of him. So,
yeah, I think when it comes to whether you play Easton or Carson, it's really, we as fans and outside of the realm of the inner locker room, we don't really know what's going on. And maybe Carson's been winging the ball around a little bit more than we thought, but it comes down to percentages. Is an 80% Carson as good as 100% Stick? And really, I think what's evolved the most is our offense has changed back to the old Bison running and stuffing the ball. And as long as that stays, I don't care who's at the helm.
I mean, there's got to be a certain sense, though, that even having Carson back in practice, I mean, talking to the guys this week, they just said there's a spark there at practice, just knowing he's back there. Even if he's not going to play, is that the kind of charge you need against Northern Iowa? I mean, this is a big game, or do you even need anything against Northern Iowa?
You know, my personal experience in knowing Carson and everything, you know, he's a great leader, and just what he brings to the practice field, you know, to the game, you know, he's a kind of a coach now, you could say. He doesn't really suit up and play in the game, but I'm sure he'll be suiting up this week, and you know, it'll be exciting to see what Coach Kleiman has for us, whether he's going to play or not.
Well, on the other side of the table, obviously Aaron Bailey is the quarterback that the Bison are going to face this weekend. He's certainly dynamic. He had a lot to do, Brian. I've talked to you about him plenty this week. I mean, Aaron Bailey as a threat for 4 quarters in a football game, how dangerous is he?
Very dangerous, very unique athlete. You don't see many guys with his size and 227 pounds that can run and change direction like he can. I mean, he is like David Johnson-esque. When you think about David Johnson, he's not quite that big, but he's got that good of feet, and the fact that he can throw it back there is a little scary to me. Now, he's not a great thrower. He's not a great thrower. They only threw for 31 yards last week, but they rushed for 402. So if you can do that, you're going to be fine. But for me, the key for NDSU is not going to be 3rd down. It's going to be 1st and 2nd down. If they can get them in 3rd and 5+, NDSU's defense is in good shape. Northern Iowa, despite it all, is only a 26% 3rd down team. They're not great in 3rd down because they don't throw the ball particularly well. So if the Bison can get them into 3rd down in 3rd and 5+, I like the Bison's defense odds.
Brian Shepard, you're smiling as he's talking, as he's making those comparisons. I mean, what are you thinking there?
No, I definitely agree. And basically what he's saying, like, that's 1st and 2nd downs are going to be big time for us. They're going to be key because a lot of the times our defensive backs and linebackers are going to be set one-on-one with this guy. And like last game, we played them, we weren't making those. So this game is going to be really important for us to make those plays.
I mean, honestly, I have to think if the Bison defense plays even half of what they put in half as much more effort as they did in the last game, this will be a totally different football game, because it was frustrating. You look back at those highlights, watching the defense play against Northern Iowa last game, it was tough. It was tough to watch. I mean, and they've come so far at this point. I mean, don't you think?
Effort's, excuse me, Kenny, effort's not an issue in this. The effort's going to be there. The thing that I've noticed over the last 4 or 5 years of the Bison defense is as long as they play their spot, make their play, and don't try to make up for anybody else or do more than they're supposed to, they've been great. And now with these younger guys, the guys in the defensive backfield, they've got these 12 games of experience now. They know better. You know, they've learned the overrunning of runners and over pursuing of the tackle isn't there. And so if they, as they say now, keep their fit, play their fit, they're going to be great.
Yeah, I think Mark hit it on the head. You got younger players. You went into Montana with a bunch of young guys that hadn't played together, and then your assignment, everything runs downhill on defense. You're only as good as the D-line, keeping the guys off the backers. The backers, if they're not running downhill as a secondary guy, we have to belly back, and so then the field gets big. If they can shrink the field, and what I say by that is everybody's doing their job. Bailey's got to run through smaller fits, smaller windows. We're going to have a much better chance of making those plays. And it all started back at Youngstown. Youngstown, we were horrific on our open field tackling, flat out. But look at how we've done since then. Guys are getting more comfortable. They're shrinking the field, and there's smaller windows to run through.
Well, we certainly obviously have a lot more to talk about. We're going to come back here in a little bit to Herd and Horns, guys. But for now, back to you.
All right, thank you very much, Beth. As she said, we will be hearing from the roundtable throughout the rest of the show. Some good stuff there from those guys.
Great stuff, and they talked about the quarterbacks a little bit and the comparison that's taken place there. We want to show you some numbers on these QBs. Let's start with Aaron Bailey. Check this out. I mean, the guy's numbers are absolutely, if we can bring these up, please, regronculous, as they say.
Stop it.
1,500 yards passing, over 1,300 yards rushing. But what I want you to notice, when you combine touchdowns, this actually ends up to be a little more. I think it should be 11 and 6, but he's got like 31 touchdowns combined, 19 of those rushing. It's a Missouri Valley Conference record. By the way, rushing yards for UNI this season broke a UNI net rushing yard record, because one of the things we got to talk about, Alex, is this Tyvis Smith guy who's averaged 144 yards per game the last 5 games.
And we're talking about a team that had, Johnson on it last year. A
right.
team that's good. This guy, Johnson's tearing it up in the NFL. For Vikings fans, got a good taste of that on Thursday. But this is a very potent offense, and Aaron Bailey, obviously, I think as he goes, so does Northern Iowa's offense. And we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about how good their defense was as well. But since we're talking about quarterbacks, let's bring up the guy who will be on the other side of him. And I think we can actually say it now.
I think you're right.
Easton's going to play. Easton is going to play. I don't think we're going to see Carson Wentz today, as we saw him in street clothes earlier at the top of the show. And, a few other outlets are reporting that he's not going to be playing today. But so Easton is the guy, and it's a redshirt freshman that has taken this team since, Carson went down. He's won 3 road games. He's performed well at the Dome. And here, his completion percentage is up. They haven't asked him to throw the football much. I think he had something like 13 pass attempts last week. They haven't asked him to throw the ball. They're really putting it on the running backs and the O-line. But Easton Stick, you hear the term game manager so much. And I think Easton Stick does a good job of managing the game. But he also contributes in the fact that he can use his leg to score.
He does. But remember last week, there was a couple guys that were wide open. He missed some of those throws. You cannot afford to do that against the University of Northern Iowa. You don't make those throws this week, it can cost you this football game.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be very important that these guys get touchdowns instead of field goals. That'll be the important thing. We'll hear more. Actually, we are going to hear more from our roundtable right after this, right here on the Farmers Union Insurance Bison Football Pregame Show.
This is the Farmers Union Insurance Bison Football Pregame Show.
Welcome back to the Farmers Union Insurance Bison Football Pregame Show. Let's take a look now at the numbers for both squads. We begin with the Bison, who are imposing their will on other teams as of late. The Bison dominating in these statistical categories, and they still lead the nation in time of possession, which was a big key for the Bison last game, keeping Montana's high-powered offense off the field. It may not be as big of a factor today against Northern Iowa, but the defense, well, they're doing pretty well too, holding other teams to under 20 points a game. And don't forget, the Bison held Montana to just 6 rushing yards last week. And we know Northern Iowa, well, they like to run the football. Speaking of Northern Iowa, they are similar to the Bison. As I said, they like to run the ball. They don't let the other team score. And as we mentioned earlier in the broadcast, it is all about quarterback Aaron Bailey. As he goes, so too does this Panther offense. Now, earlier in the week, Beth Hull sat down with several former Bison players at Herd & Horns for our Pro Seed Player Roundtable to get their thoughts. Beth?
Hey guys, welcome back out to Herd & Horns. This segment, I have to ask, Kenny, you talked about how much this team has been able to get back to that old school Bison football. How nice is that to see? And do you think that's the difference maker on the season? Do you think that's why they're still playing here in the quarterfinals of the playoffs?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is. I mean, when you control the clock, that gives our defensive guys a huge break. And when we were throwing and winging it, our time of possession was going way down. So just from that standpoint alone, not to mention that we're putting the yards on and everybody's getting touches, and we got 5 backs that are running the ball and keeping fresh too. And now we got a quarterback, not that Carson was a great runner too, but Stick's just a little notch ahead of him in the running category.
He's just a little elusive, isn't he, Brian? I mean, you've been watching him all season.
Incredibly elusive, and I think that special. You know, but I like how they've gotten a lot of different guys involved too. I mean, there's been a lot of different people and a lot of different motions and a lot of different sets. You'd still love to see them run power better, you know, consistently. You'd love them to see bust out the 8 to 10 yard runs and power. Right now it's been 3 or 4 years.
Why
I think teams have game planned against it. I mean, they know they have to stop A-gap power. I mean, that's what you got to do to stop Bison football. And that's why I think you see Tim trying to mix it up with some of the perimeter run game, the 3 backs in the backfield. They've done a lot of different things to try to get some things going, but they just have not had a lot of big runs this year. And I think you just keep waiting for power to bust a big one. We just haven't seen it this year.
Well, part of that, though, is you're rotating backs in there. And you've got guys that have some power. You look at King Frazier and you look at the runs that he had last weekend. He got hit. He didn't come down. He just kept going and churning his legs. And you've got Dunn and you've got Anderson that have got speed. And then you got Morlock. You throw him in there. You throw in the other Anderson, Darius Anderson. And you've got a wide variety of guys that have both power and speed. So that outside game, I think, has developed as these guys have developed. You look back to early on in the year when, you know, they were green and you got a true freshman in Bruce Anderson, and he comes in and he's trying to run this offense and learn as he's going.
It's a hurt hamstring as well.
Well, yeah, there's that. But you see that last week with the kickoff return and with the end around, or the sweep to the right-hand side, and just that speed that he's able to put in there. And I think, you know, the power is great to be running because it beats those guys, the defense down so much. Yeah. But you do have to throw that in, because all that does is it makes it more difficult for the defense to control and defend the offense.
And it just feels like it's all kind of snowballed. I mean, it seems like at the beginning of the year, there were so many kind of, not that I want to call them excuses, but the offensive line was banged up. They were rotating so many people in. The running backs were having a tough time kind of getting their grounding. I mean, it kind of just seems like it's all really come together at the perfect time. And a big part of that, I think, you know, we talk about this running game, but when you look at the receivers, they've basically had like 3 weeks, 4 weeks off now, because didn't see much action from them last week because the run game was so dominant. They had the bye week, and then all of those big guys basically didn't play the entire second half of the Missouri State game. I mean, what's it like now, Ryan, to come in as a receiver, and now they're going to have to pass the ball in this game to be effective, I think. They can't do it all on running against this defensive line.
The thing about you and I, too, is that over the since I've played, we've matched up with them so well. A great game, no matter what. I mean, even 2013 when we went undefeated, you know, that was our closest game to, I don't know, 3-point game maybe. But it's going to come down to the receivers not only making those plays, but also blocking well for the running backs. You know, people don't see it as much, but we're the kind of the people that turn the 10-yard runs into the 42-yard runs, you know. And I know all the receivers on the team right now, they pride themselves in blocking downfield and, you know, making the big play to even a bigger play.
Hey, Ryan Smith, you can just elbow me and say, Beth, shut up. The wide receivers have been doing plenty of work, even though they're not getting catches. It's fine. It's fine. I completely understand. I mean, that's the thing. These are always physical matchups, and they're tough ones. I mean, what's it like to play? I mean, Brian, you were probably most recently involved in one of these. What's this rivalry like now?
It's big time. This is as good as it gets, if you ask me. You and I, like he was saying, they're very talented. They know what we do, we know what they do, and at the end of the day, it's about executing.
Exactly.
Beth, if you look back at the first 6 games of this year, you talk about the passing game. Bison threw the ball 40% of the time, ran it about 60%. Since Easton's taken over, they throw it about 25%, run it 75%. And the yards per play are up too. So part of that is the gelling of everybody, the learning of the young guys coming together and figuring out what's going on, and the fact that they haven't had to pass the ball. He can pass the ball. I mean, Carson is definitely a better thrower at this point than Easton, but they haven't had to do it. They've been dominating.
Don't you think they're going to have to against Northern Iowa?
Well, I think what they're going to have to do is they can't miss the plays they missed last week. You can't miss Darius Anderson all by himself for a touchdown. When that play is there, that play has to be made. Darius Shepard has the ball hit his hands. He's got to catch that ball on the sidelines. If you got a chance to get a play downfield against Northern Iowa, not going to be many opportunities. You got to make them.
And the other thing that we have missed is offensively we play better, but the defense has played a lot better too, and it's a team effort. And when the defense is doing a lot of 3 and outs, and putting us in better starting field position, that's helped out the offense a lot too.
Well, we're going to talk plenty more about time of possession now. I get it, Kenny. It's the second time you've brought it up to me. We'll focus on that when we come back out here to Herd and Horns.
All right, thank you very much, Beth. When we come back, we're going to tell you who is playing today and who the Bison will be without on the Farmers Union Insurance Bison Football Pregame Show.
This is the Farmers Union Insurance Bison Football Pregame Show.
Welcome back to the Farmers Union Insurance Bison Football Pregame Show. Let's go out to Beth, standing by with our Sanford Orthopedic Sports Medicine Injury Report. Beth?
Thanks, guys. Here in the early morning for a Sanford Orthopedic Sports Medicine Injury Report, joined by Dr. Pyatt, who we always grill week in and week out about a lot of these different injuries. But what about some of that criteria for these players to get back on the field after an injury?
Well, I thought that would be kind of a topic for the week with everything that's going on. You know, I
don't know what you mean.
And I can't specifically talk to the issues about a specific player, but we can tell you that it really is important for us to have criteria in our mind of when we can let these guys go back because, you know, we're human too, and we can get caught up in the moment and the excitement of being a fan of this team. But really, we want to make sure we're doing what's best for the athletes. So first and foremost, we always think about the biology of healing. We can't change that. There's nothing that we can do better than what the athlete can do for themselves to heal their own body. So we depend on that. And then beyond that, we can do some things to make sure that once things are healed, that we've done everything we can to condition their body to be ready at that point. So that's where really a lot of the changes have occurred over the past decades, is that we've been able to stabilize certain situations so that we can start moving them earlier, we can start doing some of the strengthening work earlier so that they're ready to go. We always look at it, though, and want to make sure that we're not guessing on are they healed. So we look at very specific criteria. A lot of times with different fractures, we're able to look at specific imaging studies like CAT scans or MRIs now to give us much better detail, whereas an X-ray can give us a lot of information. Sometimes it's hard to really cone down to the specifics of an injury there. So we can look at those things to really tell us when is the body healed. And then we use the same thing we use for everything. We look at range of motion, we look at strength and make sure that those things are recovered. And then the biggest thing is I always look in the eyes of the athlete and I want them to tell me that they're comfortable, they're confident with where they're at. And if they're not, we're going to pull the plug on it.
I think everybody was so excited, you know, when you heard Adrian Peterson came back from that ACL so quickly. Is there a difference in expectation in how you can push a recovery when it comes to a muscle in the human body rather than the bone in a human body?
Well, the athletes can condition themselves tremendously ahead of time so that they're ahead of the game as they go into it. Trying to rehab an Adrian Peterson is much different than you and I trying to rehab an ACL, because we're starting behind the 8 ball often, whereas he's so far ahead of the game to begin with that as long as you can maintain that, you can keep him going. Now, I always love that comment about Adrian Peterson. When you look at Adrian didn't come back any earlier than most people. In fact, he came back a little bit slower than a lot of people do to get back on the field. The key was when he came on the field, he was ready to roll. So.
Well, thanks so much for your time, Dr. Pyatt. We always appreciate it. That's another Sanford Orthopedic Sports Medicine Injury Report.
All right, thank you very much, Beth. Let's take a look at the injury report today. And as we get into the playoffs, it's kind of a chess match of coaches naming injuries. We know King Frazier was nicked up, as Coach Kleiman put it, on Monday, but he should be available today. We're not sure what was nicked up, but we know he was injured a little bit. Carson Wentz, we've spent enough time talking about him this week, and, well, it seems like he will be out. As we saw at the top of the show, Carson not in uniform, in street clothes. And the last one there, mostly just for old time's sake, Chase Morlock, who seems to have taken up residency on this list this season. He is back to his full strength and should be ready to go today. As always, injuries come playoff time, coaches aren't really willing to give out that information no matter how much we ask for it. All right, let's go back out to the Dome. Mike is back in the tailgate lot, and he has our Northland Ford Dealers tailgate report.
All right, thanks, guys. Boy, you got to love setups like this. You got a heater here. You got food over there. You've got liquid libations as well, and a big crowd here as well. They were a little rowdier when I was here earlier, and we talked Chad into talking to us. So, Chad, tell me a little bit about the group that's gathered here.
Well, we got a group from basically Carrington, local business. We've been together for probably 10 years, and we come out here pretty much every week.
This setup is quite impressive. It looks like home.
Yeah, it's our home away from home, you could say.
The group looks pretty big, about 20, maybe 2 dozen, 3 dozen?
For now, but in an hour or so, it'll probably be about 500.
500? Well, that's impressive. Well, we appreciate the opportunity to chat. Everybody was pretty shy, so they kind of stuck you into the fire.
Yeah, they kind of threw me out here. I pay the bills, and I guess I'm now the spokesperson, too.
Public relations person. All right, you guys, let's loosen it up a little bit and show our Bison excitement. And get ready for the big game with Northern Iowa. Back to you.
All right, thank you very much, Mike. When we come back, we're going to hear more from our Proceed Player Roundtable. Don't go anywhere. You're watching the Farmers Union Insurance Bison Football Pregame Show.
This is the Farmers Union Insurance Bison Football Pregame Show.
All right, welcome back. Let's get you back out to Herd and Horns. Beth Hool standing by with our Proceed Player Roundtable.
Hey guys, welcome back out to Herd and Horns. We're digging into some food here now, but I have to interrupt you, Brian, because there in the break you were talking about just the last 5 games that Northern Iowa has had as opponents, and I don't know, to me it sounds like maybe they're a little bit overrated coming into this one.
Well, overrated, I don't know. Are they playing good football? Yeah, they've won 7 games in a row. You can't discount that. They won at South Dakota State 10-7. They lost to Western, they lost to NDSU, and they lost to Illinois State before that. In the last 5 games, though, yeah, you're averaging 40-whatever points a game. You played Missouri State, Indiana State, Southern Illinois, who were playing for nothing in November. Their seasons were going down the tubes. Eastern Illinois, who should not have been in the playoffs. I think that's pretty obvious. And a Portland State team that, frankly, I think people would look at as an overachieving Big Sky team. And granted, you went on the road. It's tough to go on the West Coast and all that. They've played now a bunch of straight weeks. But let's see what they do when they play a real quality opponent. I think this is the best quality opponent they've played since mid-October. So I think the level now is going to go up for them.
I don't disagree with that. I watched the Portland State game, and yeah, they had some good moments, but Portland State's quarterback was completely ineffective, and he had such a great year in the Big Sky. Now, whether that was their doing, partially, yes, but since they played the Bison the last time, like Brian says, you know, they haven't been extremely challenged. And, you know, time will tell, obviously, but if the Bison play up to their capabilities, I mean, that's what you always say. You play up to your capabilities. If you get beat by a better team. If you make mistakes and you have all of these things that go wrong and you get beat, then you kick yourself. But I don't really see that happening as far as playing below capabilities. I think.
Ryan, you're reacting there a little.
Well, I think honestly these are the two hottest teams in FCS right now, and
even with playing against an Indiana State and
hey, as long as you're pulling out wins in Missouri Valley, you know that's something to say about a team. It's a really hard conference, and it's hard to get a win every single week. And another thing is too that we kind of, I don't know, some guy, one of the ex-players came into the locker room during our 2013 year, and he said, "You never know when the national championship game is going to be." And you know, I think this weekend has got a shot at being one of the great games to be played in the Fargo Dome and, you know, possibly be the national championship game. And it's gonna be fun to see.
Yeah, some of these same teams that we just mentioned, you and I playing, the Bison played those same teams too, down the stretch. So I look at UNI's roster and I see athletes. I see athletes that I haven't seen on other teams too. So I think it really comes down to which team's more disciplined and which team's more of a team. And I wouldn't bet against the Bison from that standpoint. I see the culture at NDSU and what it's become, what it was from the tradition from our time to what it is now. And there's just, I don't see how that culture can be beat on Saturday.
I mean, you talk about tradition, you talk about all that kind of stuff, and something you can't forget, it's sort of become a little bit, I mean, somebody needs to trademark the saying, because that UNI loud has kind of become a thing now. And it was rocking when they played in October, that's for sure. Everybody knows the playoffs, they ramp it up. How big is the atmosphere, Shep, in these sort of situations when you're taking on a playoff game and then for the first time, well, South Dakota State last year, I guess, but when you're playing a Missouri Valley opponent in a situation like this, how important is the crowd to amp it up? Because they're not new to the Dome, that's for sure.
Oh, yeah. Northern Ireland coming in, they're going to know it's going to be loud. And
There you go.
Touchdown Vikings.
They love you, Chef.
That's right. No, it's big time. We're going to need Bison Nation, especially with them, you know, them playing in gun. They're going to have some type of cadence where for the ball to be snapped correctly, and that's going to give our defensive line a jump. And so the crowd level, it affects so many things, audibles, etc. So it's going to be big time.
Well, I think a big part for this game, another point, Brian, that you brought up earlier was this special teams, and they've really come into their own this year. I mean, obviously a 100-yard kickoff return is going to be noteworthy, but even more than that, I think Bruce Anderson is averaging over 40 yards on kick returns anyway. So, I mean, just how important is that in a role at this point in the season?
It's critical. It can flip the field. When we saw Ben LeCompte last week, they were punting from their own 15-yard line. They drove Montana back to their own 14. If you can drive teams back and make them drive the field in the Bison defense, that's huge. The only area I think that is a bit of a concern is the freshman kicker. He's missed a few field goals lately. You just hope it doesn't come down to a kick, you know, because you do not want to put that on a true freshman walk-on to have to make a big kick in that situation. At the same time, Northern Iowa's had the same issues. They missed an extra point last week. They missed a field goal last week. Schmadecky's been good, but don't underestimate the importance of the kicking game, in particular the field goal kickers, in a game that I think could be very low scoring.
One of the things that I've noticed in special teams watching, one guy that's been a little bit kind of in the shadows, Eric Perkins. Oh, he's done a fantastic job returning punts. You know, he's sure-handed, and he's gutsy back there. It's not an automatic fair catch call. He'll take it, and he'll take his shots and try to catch those seams and get upfield.
Well, he fields the ball too, which even on a fair catch, that's 15, 20 yards of field position, and field position will be a key. If we can get UNI to do long, sustained drives, which they have proved that they haven't been able to do it all year, that's going to be a key. We give them long field all the time starting position with LeCompte and Perkins. Both those guys have big games that will help out the defense immensely.
Special teamer?
Kind of going on what he said about Eric Perkins. You know, anytime you can catch a ball in the air, You know, whether it's a shank punt, whether it's a long punt, it helps the offense out so much with that field position, and it just saves you so many yards. And then if you can get an explosive play in the return game, it's also just going to help you out so much in the game also. It's just, it brings that energy to the dome. You know, it's going to bring that energy to the team. And, you know, special teams they're going to be the difference maker, especially with two teams so evenly matched, I think. So
once I realized they weren't booing Bruce Anderson, but screaming Bruce, boy, nothing gets your heart beating like that. It's a lot of fun. Well, coming up next, I'm going to get your guys' predictions for this one, except for maybe Mark. He's telling me no on this one. But coming back, we've got these guys' game predictions for the Bison versus the Panthers. Coming up next from Herd and Horns.
All right, time now for our Bobcat heavy lifting report today. It's going to be 3 players. The running back core, if the Bison want to win today, the running backs will need to take a load off of Easton Stick. Northern Iowa, they've got a fantastic secondary, and we know all about them. It's going to be down to these running backs. Let's go back out to Herd and Horns and get the final thoughts from our Proceed Player Roundtable.
All right, guys, welcome back out to Herd and Horns here with our Proceed Player Roundtable. Now I'm throwing it to you guys. It's time to get your guys' predictions on this one. We're sending it down the line. Ryan Smith, starting with you.
30-24 NDSU. I think it's going to come down to the last possession of the game.
I got the Bison 31 and UNI 20. I think it's going to be at least a 2-possession win for us.
Yep, 24-14 Bison.
I haven't made a prediction on a score since 1975. So I'm going to predict that both teams are going to show up and they're going to play the game. That's as far as I'm going.
Wow.
Nope, not going to step out. It wasn't a good outcome the last time.
Superstitious. You know, I think it's going to be, I'm kind of more along the lines of Shep. I think it's going to be low scoring. I'm thinking 20-13. I think every point's going to be really big. Every possession, every scoring opportunity in the red zone is going to be critical. Touchdowns instead of field goals.
You know, Mark, I'm in your boat, too. Every time I've made a decision about a game this year, I have been wrong. And I mean every single game this year. So I'm right there with you. I completely understand.
Well, I don't know about the rest of these guys, but back in the Stone Ages when I played, you know, I put my pads in my pants the same way. I put my socks on the same feet, right in the order. I put the leather helmet on when I needed to. And, you know, superstition is part of that. And coaches are some of the biggest superstitious people, and I'll fall in there, so I'm not going to go there.
Hey, man, we respect it. We respect it. I thank you guys so much for joining us out here. It was a pleasure. Thanks to Herd and Horns for hosting us. It's been an outstanding time. For now, though, for the Proceed Player Roundtable, guys, back to you.
All right, thank you very much, Beth. The game is going to be on ESPN. We will see you back here later on your local news to catch highlights of this one. Thank you so much for joining us on the Farmers Union Insurance Bison Football Pregame Show.